day, 8,000. It was impossible to tell time in the sunless cell. We only learned a whole night had passed by after the soldiers came and took us from it. They were talking to each other about the morning assault Lawrence had been planning. Ellie and I were rounded up with people from the other cells in the hallway, where they lined us up with our faces against the wall and our hands on the backs of our necks. It was hard for me to see with my nose and forehead resting cooperatively on the wall, but I've seen the line while being escorted there, and it looked like there were even fewer of us now. It couldn't have been more than 50 or so people, including the soldiers watching the line. I stared at the wall from point-blank range with my glassy eyes, waiting patiently for something to happen. After what felt like hours of standing wordlessly while the soldiers paced up and down the dim hallway and bickered over their radios, gas masks were finally passed down the line to everyone. We were instructed on how to put them on, or in the case of everybody, the soldiers had been seen fit to tie up, had put them on roughly and unsympathetically. While the rest of the masked soldiers went back to planning and arguing, one of them started strolling down the line with a casual, out-of-place stride. The other soldiers didn't seem to notice him. Every so often he would whisper something in someone's ear, receive a head shake or a no, and then continue down the line. When he got to me, he stopped dead in his tracks and sniffed the air through the empty filter port on his mask. "There you are," he sang under his breath. I stood straight and kept my neck stiff, my frightened stare hidden by the lens of the mask. The soldier reclined against the wall next to me at the end of the line and put his arm over my shoulder. With the other hand, he lifted his own mask halfway up his face, leaving it so that just his mouth was visible. "Hello, Morgan," the mouth said. "Hope your head is doing better than when we last met." He spoke in the voice of just another soldier, but the words came from someone else. "How are we on this fine morning?" I didn't say anything back. "Not the talking type, are you?" he noted. "That's all right." The mouth turned to me with its red-stained teeth and forced itself into a wide grin. "You know, just the other day I came here to check on my friend I introduced to you the other night. You can imagine my disappointment when I found you were still... you." I felt his arm wrap around my shoulders. His gloved fingers discreetly tightened around my throat. When he spoke again, it was in his real voice, emanating from inside my head as his smiling mouth stared me down. "What you can't imagine is when I did find her. Broken, bloodied, dumped on the floor like roadkill. I don't know how you did it. I don't care. A soulless human pissant like you can never understand the magnitude of what you've done to me. The pain you have caused me." My face was already red from choking. I didn't dare to try to stop him, and if anybody nearby could see it, they were doing their best to ignore it. "Your actions will not go unpunished. Understand? She will be avenged. You'll wish you just let her kill you like you were supposed to. His fingers released their deadly grip, letting me gulp air back into my pathetic, starving system. He patted me on the back with cold friendliness. In the meantime, you'll have no reason to fear the creatures outside that door. I've spoken with them. They won't come near you. You're mine. The mouth continued to stare me in the eyes, its friendly smile drilling into my brain, until it broke its lips open and revealed its blood-stained teeth again. Then it spoke. Good talk, the stolen mouth said in its stolen voice. He ran his stolen tongue across his stolen lips, then pulled the mask back down and marched away like nothing happened. Ellie's head was motionless next to me, but I knew that behind her lenses she was looking over at me. She had watched everything, but the mouth must have known people were listening. She couldn't have heard what it really said to me, the thoughts it had projected. It's all right, I lied, hiding behind my mask. We'll be all right. Her reaction was hardly different from last night. To her, I was already long gone. The soldiers herded us into a sloppy formation around them, like a living, moving fort, and made us walk down the hall until we reached the door to the panic room. A brick in the human wall was sent to open the door, then returned to its place as we watched it groan open for the first time in days. The room outside was flooded with thick, purple atmosphere. The intense synthetic sunlight penetrated through it in violet-stained rays, just enough to reveal silhouettes of the decimated village of rubber curtains and the mangled carcasses that populated it, waiting patiently for us to return from our foxhole. Instead of pouring through the door like I'd expected, the mist remained mostly stagnant, trickling through the threshold of the door in slowly drifting tendrils. I looked around again at the hazy lighting of the annex. It had been all around us this whole time. The gas must have been gradually leaking from the panic room for days. That's what was discoloring the lighting. Let's move, Lawrence ordered. We wandered in and navigated the corpse-laden room, guided at gunpoint. It was cold and foggy. The rubber curtains were covered in dry splatters of blood, like the inside of a slaughterhouse. As we walked, the soldiers chattered with each other uneasily. Where are they? Maybe we killed them all. Bullshit. Keep your eyes peeled. They're probably somewhere in the fog watching us. Clicks sounded in the distance. Talons, just like before. The soldiers reacted before they even knew where to shoot, spraying glaring tracer rounds over our shoulders in the general direction of the disturbance, without any warning. Some fell to the floor in deafened surprise, only to be pulled back into position by the exposed soldiers. Amidst the murmuring and reloading and shouting in confusion, those dreaded, almost human cries and screeches could be heard in the distance. They were all around us, hidden by the near opaque air. Figures of all shapes and sizes emerged from the mist at every angle. The soldiers' flesh barricade was already dispersing, with people scattering in all directions. Ellie was next to me, unable to clasp her bound hands over her ears. My attention was locked on the chaos around me, certain that some unseen claw or appendage would kill me any moment now. But no matter how close they came to me, I was unharmed. That grinning mouth was holding true to his promise. Nothing would touch me. Something pushed me backward onto my hands, my lenses suddenly red with blood. I didn't have the stomach to wipe them clean, but through the red I could see the person in front of me being dragged into the mist, their chest threaded by a long gray tendril. "Friendly fire! Friendly fire!" came a shout behind me. "Who's doing that? Tell me, who's doing that? Who the hell is..." The sound of precise gunshots cut the soldier off. A boot kicked me over sharply, leaving me laying mask first on the bloody floor as the mouth's sadistic laughter filled my mind, before disappearing into my racing thoughts. I ignored the mouth and got up to my knees, trying to take in the surroundings through my bloodied lenses. Another shout came over the commotion from right next to me. "Morgan, is that you? Morgan, help!" A long, ropey tongue was wrapped around his mangled legs, constricting them with bone-crushing force. I recognized his voice. "Lawrence?" I asked. Something slid toward me over the floor. His loaded PDW. "Shoot it! Kill it!" he begged. In the mist behind him, there was the shape of something on all fours, its shoulders hunched over, its obscured neck. The tongue was coming from a long and narrow snout, where two human-looking eyes stared back at me through the dense purple. I snatched up the gun, raised it, and shot a burst into Lawson's head and back, throwing the weapon out of my weak wrist. I don't remember what was going through my head at the time, if anything, but when I turned to see Ellie behind me, she was crawling away, back into the chaos. "No, wait! Stay here!" I called out over the gunfire and screams. "Ellie, come back!" I spotted the gun I'd just dropped and picked it back up, holding it tightly in my bloody left hand, then pulled her back to her feet and tried to restrict her from running away back into the crossfire. I wanted to make the most of being marked for death. I wanted to use my immunity to help bring whoever I could out of here. But the only person I could manage to hurt was my bound-up friend. "Let go, you're crazy!" she yelled back, fighting my grip. I was covered in red stains and haphazardly waving a stolen gun around, with my face completely obscured. Even if she recognized me, I didn't seem safe to her. "Don't run! Don't run! I won't hurt you!" I gave up trying to reassure her and fought against the squirming. Around us, the massacre raged on. The creatures were tearing their victims apart, not just fighting us, but terrorizing us, torturing us individually. They weren't doing this for food or defense or survival. This was all for sport. Spoiled meat. I found myself repeating under my breath. Spoiled meat. Spoiled meat. Spoiled meat. I couldn't stay here. It was time to run, no matter how afraid I might be of what was past all of this. I pulled Ellie with me into the fog and sprinted down a hazy maze of rubber curtains. The monster still wouldn't touch me, instead focusing on what was left of the survivors behind us. I ran blindly through the fog past an endless purple limbo of corpses and ruined rubber partitions, keeping my grip on Ellie's wrist until we made it out of that massive, hellish room through the gaping blast door. It was then that I think she realized we might make it, and she stopped struggling and ran with me. We kept running through the vacant corridors and atriums of the mountain we once called home. It was alien to us now. The synthetic skies were disabled completely, replaced with that same purple atmosphere. If there were any more monsters out there, they must have been hiding. My survival frenzy had run its course, and mortality seeped back into me. My adrenaline had run out, releasing burning fatigue into my legs and forcing me to slow down. The scabs over the long slash in my skin had broken in some places, stinging my tired body. Ellie looked to be better off than me physically, but neither of us could walk much longer. We stepped into a narrow hallway next to a large LED lit sector map with a bright red "You Are Here" mark piercing the mostly monochrome display. "Ellie, I'm gonna let you go," I panted. Please don't run. I'm sorry." I let go of her wrist, set down the PDW, and held up the palms of my hands. See, I'm fine. I'm not like them, I promise." She nodded, then let me take off the cables one last time. "When you shot him, I was sure you were gone. I think I trust you now." She sat down where the floor met the wall with her chafed wrists in her lap. Something in the shadows darted by, stiffening the hairs on my neck. It could have easily been my own wrecked perception making me see things, but I was too scared to care. I grabbed the gun off the floor and held it firmly in both hands. In the dim light of the map, I squinted at the translucent cockroach-colored magazine on top of the weapon. It looked almost empty. "Not many bullets," I wheezed. "And these filters won't last forever," I added. I sucked precious atmosphere through the mask, struggling to catch my breath in the toxic environment. "We need somewhere with clean air. Somewhere we can take off these things." Ellie glanced at the humming LED map on the wall. "Do you have numbers?" "Numbers? For your inspections, codes, passwords for doors. Some of them. Why?" She raised her arm and pointed to an icon on the map. We entered the overgrown garden of Colorado Park, passing through its seal for the first time in an eternity. When we stepped out of the airlock and took off our masks to breathe, the air was moldy and wet, but breathable, hardly as dangerous as the gas outside. "You said you want to leave," Ellie asked. At first, I didn't even recognize her voice. Her speech was becoming smoother now. I think it's because she trusted me. Hearing her voice, I wish I'd gotten to know her better before all of this. "That's the plan," I said. "Those things had to have breached the entrance to get inside, so maybe we can get out through there." Ellie stopped and wrung the mask in her hands. "What if everything is like this?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I have to see it. Don't you want to?" Ellie's eyes were fixated on the bony tree dressed in vines and damp leaves at the center of the park. She set her mask down next to her and sat its roots, taking it in from this new and unfamiliar angle. When I would come here every day, I would think about it. The outside. Imagine it. She slid the notebook out from the back of her shirt and held it close. I had whole books full of thoughts. It was all I did. I sat down next to her. It took more strength than I'd expected to free my hand from the gun. Letting go of it felt like jumping out of a window. But when I brought my hand back, I felt free from all the paranoia and danger that had shackled it to my hand in the first place. I closed my eyes, let my back rest in the filthy bed of overgrown grass and weeds behind me. I pretended I still remembered the real world well enough to imagine I was there again. What did you imagine it was like? I asked. I heard the back of her coat recline in the grass. There's trees, she said. Forests. Everywhere? Not everywhere, she said. But all over. The world is so big. Forests, deserts, mountains, oceans. It's different everywhere you go. Is it ever like this? Hallways and concrete? Maybe, she said. But we don't have to go there if you don't want. I think I've seen enough of this. We were there for what seemed like so long. Resting, imagining, dreaming. We were so close to freedom. Do you think the sky is different? I asked. I hope. She sat back up, crunching the damp grass once again. We'll know soon. I sacrificed the image in my head and opened my eyes back up to the disgusting, fake, real world. Ellie was right. The real world was out there waiting for us. There was no point in hesitating. This was our chance to leave. Are you ready? I asked. I think so. Me too. I let the gun take my hand back into the seductive security of its ergonomic grip. Let's go. The egress structure, the only way out of Colorado Mesa, was made with a much different day in mind. Its final portion was made up of 7 gymnasium-sized chambers, each separated by massive, 10-meter-thick gates and security systems. They were paved with asphalt like a giant road intended for a convoy of 1,000 brave citizens of COM to exit and explore the outside in search of a place to settle down. As it turns out, all we ever needed was an exit big enough for 2 people. The trip to the egress structure was mostly by elevator and monorail, but even when we had to continue on foot, nothing disturbed us on our way there, save for the occasional suspicious noise or stirring in the corner of our vision. Something was watching us, and I knew what it was. No, not what, but who. When we made it to the innermost atrium, the first gate was closed. I didn't know if I could tell Ellie. I didn't have the codes to open anything in the egress structure. But I didn't have to. Everyone knew that only the council had access to those, and they were all still in the panic room a few hundred meters below us. Spoiled meat. My eyes were drawn upward to an amber glow streaming from the window of her terminal room door up on the catwalk. It seemed to stare back, buzzing with a zombified vacant glow. I'd been told there were gate bypass doors in the first couple gates, but if any of the last 5 were still closed, that wouldn't matter. I squinted at the light, and just as I was wondering who could have turned it on, a blurry shape moved past the frosted glass window. Surely you didn't think I'd forget. I said nothing. Come upstairs. Alone. I held out Lawrence's gun and gave it to Ellie. Good choice. She took the gun into her hands, holding it just as cluelessly as I had. I expected her to question why I was going alone. I know I would have, but she didn't. She must have thought I was losing it again. I reasoned that was probably for the better. Now, I have something for you. My footsteps crunched against the broken glass of the shattered synthetic sky above. Gravity felt stronger with each step up the narrow steel staircase, until I was standing frozen in front of the door with its glowing, blurry rectangle window. Even up close, it was impossible to make out the inside through the glass, but I didn't need to. I knew who was in there. Ellie, if I don't come back in a few minutes, then... I choked on my own words. A sick sensation was filling my ribcage to the brim. Then I'm sorry. I forced myself into the room and slammed the door, squeezing my eyes shut. Just do it, I pleaded. I dropped to my knees. Just get it over with. Don't make me wait, please. Nothing. When I finally had the courage to open my eyes, I was met with an empty room. Looking down at me was a tall steel gate bypass door with the key already in the lock. I looked around to see if he was still in the room, but it was empty all around me. Don't do this, I choked. No more games. Still no answer. I got up and pushed open the door, only to find myself looking down the rest of the catwalk. For the first time in decades, I saw all 7 chambers, each with their respective gates still wide open. At the very end of the tunnel was a blinding white light. This was it. This was the outside. I walked hypnotically down the stairs and along the cavernous indoor road. I lost myself in the light, unable to make out what it was from so far away with my unadjusted eyes. Slowly I picked up my pace until I broke into a full sprint. Chamber 3, Chamber 4, Chamber 5, Chamber 6. I stopped at the opening of the last chamber. I had to take off my mask to confirm what I was seeing. I don't understand. What is this? This is what you've always wanted, Morgan. This is your world. There were no trees, no birds, no forest, just more gray as far as the eye could see. Gray was just like the world indoors. Far below, at the foot of the mountain I lived my life in, an endless desert of gravel and infertile dirt, disappeared into the dark, foggy horizon where the shadows of distant, monstrous mountain ranges lay motionless and dead. The land in front of me was molested by sharp, volcanic rock formations like nothing I'd ever seen. Gnarled patches of leafless roots stood stiffly against the otherworldly outcroppings, and inside the ground's deep wounds like ropey infections. Maybe this was limbo. Maybe this was hell. But whatever it was, no world I came from could have ever perverted it into this haunted carcass of a landscape. I must have stood there for so long, hardly even blinking in the cold, wet air that had flooded the chambers. After preparing to open my mouth for minutes, I finally spoke. "I'm finished with this," I told him. "I'm ready for you to kill me." "Kill you? Let's not make assumptions. You'll die no matter what I do." "Then what else is there for you to take from me? Aren't you forgetting something? Someone?" I bolted back the way I came, leaving the colorless hell behind me. "You said you wanted me!" My legs were so sore now. My lungs were rusted shut. By the time I made it through the bypass room, I wanted to collapse right where I was standing. When my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw Ellie was beneath the catwalk, resting her back against the wall, her stomach smeared with blood. She was choking behind her mask, so I took it off to let her cough. "Ellie, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have gone off without you. I should have stayed close and..." "It's okay, Morgan," she gagged. "I shot at it. I scared it off." She gestured to the now empty PDW by her side. Salty blood dripped through her teeth. "We made it all the way here. We're so close to home." If it had been brighter, if I hadn't been wearing my mask, she could have seen my expression. She would have known something was wrong. But she couldn't. She didn't. "Did you see it?" she struggled. I said nothing. What was it like?" I looked down at the wound. The floor below us was slowly painting itself red. Our hands were red. Everything was red. The life already leaving her eyes. "It was beautiful," I lied. "Were there trees?" I nodded. "All kinds of trees. A whole forest. It looks like we're right in the middle of it." "And water?" "Everywhere. There's a long river coming from down the mountain. And further out I could see a beach, an ocean." "And the skies?" "It's like nothing I've ever seen before. I don't know how to describe it. You'll see when we get out." She smiled. I could see her consciousness starting to slip. "Ellie, I said it's okay. You did everything you could," Ellie croaked. She slid down a little further to look up at the orange glow through the catwalk's gates. I just wish I could have seen it. You still can. I lied again. I know it hurts, but it's not that bad. I can bring you outside when you're ready. I promise I will. Her hand found its way onto my shoulder, adding a new bloodstain to the white fabric in the shape of her hand. I held it there. I felt her arm slowly weakening. It'll be all right. Her fading words leaked from the side of her bloody mouth. Thank you, Morgan. Eventually, my own hands were all that was holding hers there, her head resting on top of them. I'm sorry. Now you know what it's like to be made the last of your people. Now you know what you've done to me. Hello, listeners. Thank you for listening to tonight's creepypasta, Synthetic Skies Part 6, the last and final episode. My deepest thanks and gratitude to the original writer of this epic thriller tale, Pyrous, for allowing me to narrate his story. I highly recommend going back to listen to the other parts of this series. I will include all links in the description below. If you would like to send me a story to be featured in a future episode, please send it over to my email. Do not forget to subscribe and click the notification bell to keep up with future content. Before I go, I would like to apologize to all of my listeners for the delay in videos, but I strive to bring you all new content in this new year, so be sure to stay tuned. Thanks again for listening, and as always, I am your host, Marie Lives the Horror.